As a child, what I remember about my father's involvement in the produce business was him always coming home around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon and never being there when we woke up in the morning.
Coming home from school as a young kid, you had to be really quiet because Dad was asleep and Mom made sure that you knew that, hey, your father's sleeping, so you have to be really quiet. So you'd bring your friends over and you'd tell your friends, we can hang out here, but you got to be really quiet.
He worked really hard, and that's pretty much how we found out my dad was in the produce business, by these crazy hours he worked going to provide for our family.
Dinner time growing up in our house was at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock sharp, you had to be at the dinner table. We lived in a neighborhood where we would play outside after school with all of our friends. At 5 o'clock sharp, my dad would step out on the front porch and he'd whistle. We might be 5, 6 doors away playing in the park at the bottom of the street with our friends, and everybody in the neighborhood knew the whistle and they knew it was our dad. We just took off running back up the hill to get home in time for dinner. Had to be there, 5 o'clock in your seat.
He got to be maybe 56, 57. And I was working in a lumber mill. But when I got out of high school, I was working on strikes. So I called Bruno. I says, Bruno, we're on strike. You can give me a job. So I come down to get a job. Never been to San Francisco. So I went to work in the postmark with him, putting up orders and stuff. And then I went back to Weed when the strike was over. Then I got drafted in the Army. And then when I got back and we got married, I get a call from Bruno and his partner, Joe Terratino. He says, Joe, I want you to come down and sell. He says, I don't know anything about selling. He said, well, Joe said you can do it. So this guy, Walt, I went to work when he opened a little stall for Lee Ray in the old market. He was very sick. So he says, took me down and gave me a book. He said, you got to start selling. I said, really? And I've been selling ever since.
Some of the feelings I had about the produce business as a kid, I didn't really notice it much different than other people would imagine it to, because that's all I remember. My father on weekends used to bring me down to the produce market just to kind of have donuts and coffee and to see what he does and walk around.
And we were young kids, probably 8, 9, 10 years old, on Saturday mornings with my dad, and his 2 or 3 other brothers would be here doing work on Saturday, and Dave and I would be throwing cherry tomatoes at trucks as they drive by, and climbing all over boxes of fruit and stuff, that type of thing. But really, when I was 14 years old, after my freshman year of high school, entering my sophomore year, my dad brought me down to the produce market to start working, just so I can start making some money. I had paper routes before that, but you wanted to get a car when you turn 16, so realizing as a graduating freshman entering your sophomore year, you needed an automobile, and Dad's philosophy was, you can get any car you want, you just got to be able to pay for it. So he'd bring you down here and you'd come to work with him, 1:30 in the morning and work till 11 o'clock. And so the summers for me, I'll never forget, as sophomore or junior, were kind of eat, sleep, and work. I was down here 5 days a week from 1 o'clock in the morning till noon. And then you'd go home and take a nap, you get up, eat dinner, you go back to bed, and my dad would wake me up again at 12:30, 1 o'clock, get ready to go to work. And you did that for, summer back then was like 12 weeks long, and that's kind of what you did. And you saved a lot of money because you couldn't spend any money. You didn't have a chance to spend any money. So that's how I first got into the business.
My first involvement in the produce business came when I was about 15 years old. It was a summer job down here for all the boys in the family. My older brother Dave and Steve had all come down. It was almost like this rite of passage to be able to come down and work for my dad and my Uncle Louie and my Uncle Marino at the time.
Then I think as I got a little older, maybe when I was like 16, 17, 18 years old, it was kind of fun. I had a few other cousins down here. My brother was down here, my dad was here, my uncles were here, and they'd always kid with you. And there were other young kids that grew up in the produce business with us whose families were involved in the produce business. So we'd kind of hung out with those guys. We were all kind of the same schedule. So our only night outs would be like Saturday nights together, so you can go out and hang with your buddies, and then Sunday morning you'd be resting because you had to go to work that night.
David, when he got out of school, went to college. 6 months, I don't want to go to college anymore. Steve didn't want to go to college. My daughter didn't go to college. Shows the education of my family.
When Shasta Produce started, I believe Dominic might have still been in high school or just finishing. He went on to CSM, but while he was at CSM, he was working part-time for Shasta. Shasta was growing and they needed more help, and Dominic wanted to be a part of the Shasta team.
I had some experience on the forklift and putting orders up and being a warehouse guy, and they needed a guy. So I took a semester off of school in 1986 and never looked back.
So Shasta Produce was conceived or started by my brother David and myself. It was actually Dave's idea. He was selling citrus at Sunset. I was working up at Golden State as a part-time salesman, whatever they needed me to do up there, part-time salesman, running their dock more or less, or driving a forklift, whatever they're doing. And Dave had the idea, hey, we should do this ourselves. He realized from the sales part of it, there's a lot of money to be made here. We should try do something like this. We give it a go. So
after deciding I can do this company idea can work and I could start selling produce on my own, I realized that I needed to start putting together some type of a plan. At that time I was working for Sunset Produce, who, had I decided to go to business, which I had, I would eventually have to go and compete against them. So I had to go to the produce terminals at that time and acquire some space. It sort of fell in together at the time because right when I really wanted to get something going, a couple of empty stalls came available. And that was in late 1985. At that point, I went and asked my brother Steve if he wanted to join me and start a produce company. Subsequently, at the same time as that was going down, my father Guido was in Chile actually looking at grape growers.
And I get a call from David. He says, Dad, me and Steve are going to business. I says, fine, you guys are 21 years old, you do what you want. So when I got back, they're across the street under Shasta Produce. And that's when it started.
When we opened up Shasta Produce, the original idea came from my selling citrus at Sunset Produce. That was really the only item that I had known. I had sold from 1980 to 86. So I had some pretty good knowledge and I loved it and I worked hard at it. When we went over to Shasta Produce, we opened up with the citrus department. Some people actually say, hey, you opened that company on 2 pallets of oranges. It's kind of how it happened. So we only had a citrus deal at the beginning. And in the very beginning, we were in the corner of the market, and most of the business was in the center of the market.
We were in 2 little stalls in the terminal across the street from where we are now, and just selling citrus for the first few years. It was just David, myself, Dominic, 2 other young kids who were working with us. Our sister Lisa was the bookkeeper. So Dave and I took on those 2 stalls. Golden State was across the street from us in a better location. So kind of what we did is Dave would kind of go stand near the Golden State docks and cherry pick customers off their dock. And I would be back at the store, kind of man the store. And if I had a customer that I didn't know how to handle exactly, because I wasn't familiar with citrus when we first started, we had this big horn that I'd blow, and Dave would run back over. He'd hear the horn, he'd run back over and work with that customer.
One of the jokes of the market back in the 80s was David, they used to call me the dolphin. I'd literally jump off a 3-foot loading dock from somewhere and run back to Shasta Produce to take the order or help the customer out. You can imagine an air horn going off at 3 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the morning. That's how it happened. That was one of the kind of clever things we figured out.
Over the years, we've grown the company various ways. The very first way I believe we grew this company was when my father came to work for us. I'm not sure the year. It was shortly after we opened, 2-3 years after we opened, my father came to work and brought a whole new product line to our company. And we probably doubled the size of our company overnight.
When the contract was over, I went to the office and Bruno Joe, I says, thank you for everything. I gave you 35 years of my life. Good years, you're good to me. Thank you. After that it was over, I walked across the street and I says to Dave and Steve, I'll be here Monday. And that's what I did.
We expanded from 2 stalls to 4 stalls in the produce market, built a big refrigerator, and it just kind of took off from there. We handled a full line of fruit and citrus.
Within a year or 2 of starting Shasta, everybody was young. And there's so many, I call them boys, actually men. And they're very playful, and they had a lot of fun in the early days. One item I do remember is they had this slingshot. It was like a 2-man slingshot. Two boys had to pull back on it while a third one set a grapefruit in the middle of it, and they sent it launching over the market. We're not sure where they went to see how far they could send this grapefruit. They had a lot of fun with that for a while until Guido got wind of it. Guido was still working across the street for his brother's company at Golden State. He came across the street and he told them, enough. That was the end of the slingshot, but it was fun while it lasted.
The name Shasta Produce came from Lake Shasta, actually. Growing up in the late 70s all the way up to like 1985, I spent pretty much every summer on houseboat trips with my friends on Lake Shasta, and I loved that lake and I loved everything about it. And the name Shasta just rang for me, and it just sounded like the right name, and that's where the name Shasta Produce came from.
When I think about the future, I see Shasta being here still and thriving. I believe they're going to continue on this course. And when I think about retiring myself, about every 5 years, I think about that, and I tell myself, well, in 5 years we'll revisit that and we'll decide what to do then. And I keep thinking within 5 years I'll probably not step down completely, but maybe pull back the hours just a bit. I've built the office up, everything we do in the office and the way we do it. It's hard to just walk away from that too. I don't think I would want to just turn it over and turn my back on it. But you know, if you hit the lottery.
I plan on working at Shasta Produce and in the produce business for as long as I can, for as long as it'll let me. I enjoy the produce business, I enjoy the people. It's been a great place to come, and the people that I meet, like I said, it's just been great time, some lifelong friends in my family as well.
I see myself being here as long as I can physically get up and come down here. My dad's 79 and he's down here 6 days a week. I have another uncle that's down here, he's 84 years old. He's down here 5 days a week. I look like I'm probably on that same path.
How long do I plan on working in the produce business? As long as I can. I'm not going to stop till somebody can stop me or I can't get here anymore.
I have no intention of just retiring. Why should I? I come here, got my 4 kids here. I got a lot of my grandkids here, a lot of friends. I love it down here. You see what it does for my family. They all have a nice life. They work hard, all of them. It's not where, they made it, not me. I made them, but they made the company.
And with all the new faces and all the new product we're bringing in, we're really excited to show you what we have in store for years to come.